It was day 6. Steve was on tower duty when first light came. It was a beautiful fall morning. The cool, crisp air, the leaves bright yellow and orange. Linda and Lee were up and already had water boiling on the rocket stove for the oatmeal. Everyone else was still asleep. I heard Greg close the door from the missionary apartment and walk through the auditorium. I got up and met him in the lobby. We walked up to the pavilion together. Linda and Lee had made us each a cup of hot, strong coffee. After an hour or so, everyone had been through and eaten breakfast. Sadie and Callie took the children and went into the nursery where there were games and toys to keep them occupied. During our prepping, we had managed to accumulate quite a supply of food over the last couple of years. It wasn't all here, but we had most of it. I still had the supplies buried back at home, and we had stuff buried in Vermont as well, but that was over 90 miles away. 3 of us had been prepping for our families, but now we had extra mouths to feed, and it was clear the food would not last forever. Aaron brought up the idea of hunting to shore up supplies, and we all agreed. Steve, armed with an M4 rifle for backup, followed Aaron into the woods with his .243 Winchester. Greg, Jerry, and myself were going to go out on patrol the area, starting where Greg and I left off yesterday. Pastor and Richie would remain behind, process firewood, and pull security for the camp. Linda and Lee took on the chore of trying to wash a giant pile of dirty laundry we had accumulated. After passing the driveway where the burnt-down house was, we continued along the road about 500 feet to the next house. This one was closer to the road and looked undisturbed. We approached it again, walking slowly, spread out slightly. I took position behind an oak tree in front, about 50 feet from the front door. Greg went to the left and Jerry to the right, both disappearing behind the house. About 5 minutes later, Greg opened the front door from the inside and motioned me in. The house was empty. It appeared as if nobody was home when the EMP went off. We moved on to the next house. The next 3 houses were pretty much the same. The 5th place we came to was a small farm. We spread out about 100 feet from each other and walked single file down the dirt driveway. There was smoke coming from the chimney, and we heard a rooster crowing out back. Before we can get close enough to see anything, a rifle barrel came out the window and bore down on us. A voice called out for us to stop. A man emerged from the front door with a double-barrel shotgun and asked what we were doing on his property. The rifle barrel in the window still pointed at us. We explained who we were and what happened, and he told us that 4 men had come by early yesterday and tried to burn them out. He said he was able to shoot 2 of them, and the other 2 managed to escape. There was room out back for us to be buried next to them, he told us. I said that would not be necessary, I hoped. I asked him if one of the guys that got away was a tall, thin, balding man, and the other a stocky man with a goatee and glasses. He said that sounded like them, and asked what I knew about them. I told him that they had burnt his neighbor's house down and killed the couple that lived there. I also told him that we killed them, and that they wouldn't be harming anyone else. Cautiously, he invited us over. All the while, the rifle still in the window pointed at us. We talked for a few minutes, and he felt a little more comfortable with us and invited us in. It was warm in the house, almost too warm. The rifle in the window was being held by his wife. Come to find out, did not contain any ammunition in it. The man told us that they didn't keep much ammo for it, and they had used what they had, exchanging fire with the four marauders yesterday. It was a lever-action rifle chambered in .45. We ended up trading them a box of 50 .45 rounds for a dozen eggs and a jar of fresh honey from their beehives. We told them where we were and offered to stay in contact. They agreed, and an alliance was formed. It was good to know we had a good neighbor close by. It was almost dusk now, and we decided to head back to the church. Backtracking, we came back almost to where the burnt-out house was, and we saw them. 6 men walking in the road, armed with shotguns and rifles. They saw us and immediately fired at us. We scattered off into the trees on both sides of the road, returning fire. I looked over and saw Jerry lying by the side of the road. He was shot, once in the shoulder and once in the right thigh. We had managed to take down 3 of them. Greg was across the road and yelled for me to cover him as he ran out to pull Jerry to cover. I fired in quick succession at the 3 remaining men, pinning them down behind a stone wall. Greg got to Jerry and managed to pull him off the road. He managed to stop the bleeding. The shot in the shoulder went right through, missing the bone. The shot in the thigh, however, struck an artery and Jerry had lost a lot of blood. We continued to engage the enemy in fire and hit 1 more. Just then, 2 shots rang out, and the 2 remaining men fell forward dead. The farmer emerged from the woods off to their left and walked toward us. He had heard the shots and skirted around through the woods, coming out by the left side of their position. They never even saw him coming. We were tending to Jerry when I suggested getting back to the church where we had some first aid capability. Greg said he didn't think we should move him because of his blood loss, which was extensive. Jerry lingered for almost an hour while Greg did what he could for him. He told us over and over to promise to take care of Jolie. I promised him that he himself could see to it, and of course we would all be there to make sure she was okay. He slumped back as the last bit of life drained out of him. Greg said, "We gotta get off of this road." The farmer grabbed up the guns and ammo the 6 guys had and suggested dividing it up between us. I thanked him for coming to our aid and told him to keep it for his home security. He told us he didn't want to leave his wife alone any longer than he had to, that he'd like to stick around and help, but he just couldn't. Said he was sorry about our friend, shook our hands, and headed for home. Greg and I were trying to figure out how to get Jerry's body back to the church when out of nowhere, 3 military surplus jeeps from what looked like the Second World War era rolled around the corner, 100 yards away. We saw the men in them, and they appeared to be wearing tactical BDUs that said Security Force in large white letters across their backs. What the heck was Security Force? We heard shots whiz by around us and we ran into the woods as fast as we could. We hated the thought of leaving Jerry's body behind, but didn't really have much choice in the matter. Man, we dreaded telling Jolie that Jerry was dead. The walk back seemed to take forever, while in reality it was just short of an hour. Jolie started crying hysterically when we told her. Linda held her and tried to comfort her, as if anything could. When Richie and Jolie's mom got divorced after she ran off with a guy she met at work, Linda watched Jolie every night while Richie worked second shift. Jolie was 3 years old at the time, and so grew up with Linda as the closest thing to a mom she ever really knew. Linda loved Jolie as she did her own daughters, who were now grown and spread out over the country living their own lives. The closeness they shared caused great contention with Sharon, Richie's new wife, who for some reason saw Linda as competition. It always troubled Linda, who saw what it did to Jolie. Linda always reasoned that the more people someone had to love them, the better off they were. Sharon, of course, didn't see it that way. Just then, Steve and Aaron came back from hunting empty-handed. Aaron explained that they picked up the trail of what he believed to be a couple deer, but they never saw them. He had a plan for tomorrow to put some apples on a trail where he believed they crossed regularly from some of the signs he saw. He also pulled Greg aside and suggested leaving Steve behind. He was sure he could apply more stealth and be more successful if he was alone. He reasoned that the deer probably heard Steve crunching leaves under his feet from a mile away. When we told Steve that Aaron wanted to hunt alone the next day, Aaron told him, "Nothing personal, I'm just used to hunting alone." Steve just shrugged it off. "No big deal," he said. That night we ate pretty good. We had rice and black beans with Progresso minestrone soup poured over them. We all ate quietly. Callie had made a pan of cornbread to go along with it. My chest tightened up whenever I would look over at the empty place at the table where Jerry sat. The mood at church that night was somber. That was an understatement. After dinner, when everyone was ready to retire for the evening, I offered to take first watch in the tower. Certainly wasn't going to get much sleep anyway. Steve remained behind after the others went to bed. He sat with me in the tower. He asked me details of how it happened, how Jerry died. We remembered him together. He was only 20 years old, but he was a dear friend. One of those people who you just can't help but like right off. I remember when Jolie first started bringing him to church. We wanted to dislike him. In a way, Jolie was like a daughter to me and Steve also. Nobody was good enough for her, we thought. But we grew to love Jerry like a son. I remember the day he got saved at an altar call in this very church. The pastor took him aside and led him to the Lord. Thank God for that blessed assurance we have in Christ. We knew without a doubt that Jerry was with Jesus this very moment. We remembered his life, his friendship. We laughed. We cried. We thank God for all he gave us. We thank God for Jerry. I felt a little guilty about his death. We should not have been on the roadside walking. We should have been back in the woods, walking quietly, spread out. We let our guard down. That's why Jerry's dead, I said. We vowed we would be more vigilant. We would not let our guard down again. Unfortunately, that was a lesson that cost us one of our own. Cost Jerry his life. This is do or die now, literally. We're playing for keeps. There was no room for error. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.